Well, I'd like to begin to thanking everybody the crew, everybody who helped to set up this place. You did a nice job. Thank you. Um, and again, to thank the speakers. They happen to be my research team as well. Vanessa, Jimmy, and Mauricio. They're all my kids. Um, but before I continue, I'd like to remind you that we are asking for one thing, is to help us with a survey. We are putting in this effort to present the book and present the story and the themes, and we'd like to know how we did. So your utmost sincerity will be the best. And the question is, after the presentation, I'm more likely to read Pelon the same as I came, or less likely, right? Easy one. So as Vanessa mentions, we did cast a wide net, uh, looking for topics, characters, um, people, things that have the potential to make a good story. And the focus was a Yuma legend, right? So anything that can help us put together a Yuma legend. And uh, when I received the leads and I kept going over and over, Pelon stayed in my mind. And for some reason, because there's a wealth of information out there, of stories that we could use, but for some reason, Pelon kept coming back, right? So it was in the back of my mind always. The story was there. It was complete. And I saw it. And that's why one of the comments was, well, you put this book together so quickly. What can I say? I might have had additional help. And the other thing that causes satisfaction is that when I presented the manuscript to Lori Kochora, who helped me, he helped me as a beta reader and also as doing part of the research. He did mention that Erpelo, who was Pelon's real name, was in the memory of the Quetzal, especially in relationship with Chief Francisco and the Battle of Secata. Uh, that theme is also touched upon in the book. So you guys are lucky today because this is not the first time I address a crowd. I used to be a tour guide at the Yuma Territorial Prison 30 years ago when I was putting myself through college. And I could give you a 1 hour tour at a discounted 30 minutes. Your lucky day. So I always observed folks that were involved in history and actually giving the tours that they had this capacity to remember dates, names, places, situations, and I just couldn't muster, the intellect, or I don't know, the capacity to remember. And so I never thought that I would be doing this, and much less writing a novel. You can thank maybe my freshman English teacher, Mr. Westfall. He had us writing short stories, and I remember writing a short story about detectives. I didn't know anything about writing, right? But what I do remember is that he took time and read the story and gave me real feedback. And that takes care to actually do that when you have dozens and dozens of kids, right? So I have that imprinted in my memory, and I thank him for that. That's a great impression. And what can I say? As I became an author, I still remember him. I used to begin my tours by talking about the geographical situation in Yuma. And as you know, what it is, the Yuma Valley is located. It's what it used to be the floodplains of the Colorado and the Gila River. Where we stand, and the southern border is Sandy Mesa, the eastern border being the Gila Mountains, northern border, the Laguna Mountains, and to the west, Cargo Muchacho. But all that's in between is the actual Yuma Valley, right? What was Kutsan territory goes beyond. It looks more like Yuma County nowadays. But let's focus on Yuma Valley because it was much different 200 years ago. And because there was a floodplain, it used to house forests, the river riparian. It was plush with mesquite, willow, and cottonwood trees. And the Gila would start swelling in May, and by June you would see the Colorado at its full majesty. It was enormous and marvelous to watch. But that all ended in 1936, of course. And the Yuma Valley also was the house for the Kutsan and their hunting grounds, and it was places where they harvested all the food and materials they needed to survive. They had other places where they did rock quarry because they were Neolithic or still using stone tools, right? But what does that mean if they're using stone tools? I mean, to the Europeans, it meant that they were not industrious or developed, right? But the Americas, looking at it through different eyes, were either just as industrious or more industrious and more developed, especially if you consider that in the Americas we had an account of the Earth, the size of the Earth, how far the cosmos and different constellations. They also accounted for calendars that went into the thousands of years. They had mathematics, great buildings, the likes that we can't explain to this day how they were built. So in terms of being industrious, it's just a point of view in my perspective. So Yuma was not a barren land. Yuma was plush with vegetation and was a great environment to grow families, right? Now, before I continue, I'm going to open myself up and tell you about my dreams. For many years, I had dreams where I was haunted. I had apparitions of a shadowy figure that would appear in random dreams. There was another set of dreams that repeated more, where I remember it as a video game where I was placed in front of the shadowy figure and I was supposed to react. And at that point, at that time, I didn't know about dreams. I didn't know about visitations. All I knew was fear. So whenever I had this dream, or the reoccurring dream, or the random dream where the shadows would come out of the shadows, this character would come out. By the way, a hooded head, and the rest was shadow. Sometimes I could see outlines of hands or the face. That continued for years. You guys want to hear the rest of the story? I will continue in a little bit. Can we go to slide 2, please? All right, so I have a big list of contributors. So you guys know my research team. That's the Vanessa, Jimmy, and Mauricio. And also,
just as important is the beta readers, because the manuscript script that I produced was awful. I admit it. But I had brave beta readers that powered through it and gave me such good input. I have two of them today, Angie and Pam. Thank you very much. Everybody, that we deserve a round of applause. I could empathize being you and then being handed manuscript from someone who hasn't written a book before, and trying to figure out where do we go from here, right? But it was brave of you. And it made a lot of difference. I really think I owe you a lot. This project owes you a lot. My editor, Rob Bignell I think he's from Costa Mesa. Illustrator, one thing you're going to find, the illustrations in this book are top notch. Right? And it probably took me more time to get the illustrations from the time I chose the illustrator to the time I received the finals. Probably took me more time to do that than to actually perform the research. It was quite a lift. It was a learning experience for me. But if I had to do it again, I would do it again, because I found the best guy. I found the guy his name is Erickson Ludwig from Venezuela. He was interested in the story. He was artistically endowed, of course he is, and I was able to contract him. So in my objective, like I think Jimmy mentioned, is to have the young readers be interested, to read something from Pelon that they don't learn at school, right? That you can Google some of these stories, and Google will probably say, yeah, this happened, but it will give you the whole story. Right? So some things need to be aired out and need to be shown the light of day, and stories like Pelon is one of them. Many thanks to all that helped me. I really didn't tell Mauricio what to write. I asked him to pick a chapter, and I let him do it. That was his own reaction. Right? And it's very satisfying. I'll tackle one of the easy things he mentions. He said, oh, it's hard to imagine, tell me if I remember correctly, what life would have been without In-N-Out or Starbucks, right? Looking at the comforts. But then he has curiosity. What if it would have been better? Right? Nobody told him that, but he's got that curiosity, right? Not shutting the door to the comforts. Right? The other thing, Mauricio, did you learn about the Yuma crossing at school? No? See, that was an easy one. They don't get taught at school. Why? So it is also scary to think or put yourself in a situation where you say, living in the natural world is probably hard, right? And to the Europeans, when they saw folks living in the natural world, they had different judgments, right? They judged the progress, or like I said, how industrious they were, and to their point of view, that needed some correcting. Plus, they wanted their lands. Let's now talk about the other point that Mauricio brought up, which is about the deaths of two-thirds of the Quetzal population. In the Indian War around the year 1848, the U.S. Army decided to put down the Quetzal. The Quetzal had lived free and endured Spanish occupation and Mexican occupation for many years, right? But they put an end to that, and as Mauricio states, they lost two-thirds of the population. And when I wrote that, and when I was understanding, I mean, I understood, right? Intellectually, you can do the math, how many people have to die to lose two-thirds. I felt, a little sad, compelled, but it didn't quite reach my heart. And I wasn't one with with a hard heart. Yeah. Tripping myself over my words. But it didn't. I didn't have that level of empathy when I first read it. And it was until I finished the project, and I'll also continue that discussion in a little bit when we talk about my abuela. And that hardness of heart I encounter in many places, because there's some justifications that say, well, it was for progress, right? We took over the land and we put down rebellions because for progress. That I see it as a justification and a lack of empathy. Right? So to all of us as a community, I'm going to continue to talk about Pelon, but if we bring this to light and help people understand that if the shoe was on the other foot, right? If we take them through that exercise, maybe they'll reach some level of empathy, right? Because it's easy to say that, oh, well, that's just a fact of life. People, tribes taking over or people taking over, and it's changed, right? But what if it was, for instance, if it was you who were dragged out of your house, right? Kids killed, and your wife taken over and over for the sake of progress. It just brings us to that level of thinking, right? And it begs for additional understanding. Anyways, but we're all circling back. Now we're thinking, living with nature is the thing, right? That's the new thing. All the chemicals and artificial things that we found that it's not good for us. So we're kind of going back to nature. That's a sample of one of Erickson's illustrations, and like I said, they're just phenomenal. You'll find many of them in the book. If you like action-packed westerns, you're gonna love Pelon. It recounts his feats of the book recounts his feats of valor. Again, as we are looking at Pelon and telling his story, I squeeze in as many facts about Yuma as I can. So it's actually like a history book. I mentioned earlier that I didn't have enough information about Pelon to make it a nonfiction book. But I wish I could, but I did my best filling in the blanks there. Also, you will be witness to his adjustment or assimilation. Right? How he started as 100% free, living
being part of nature. And I don't mean free as not in jail, but I mean he was born free. And eventually he adjusts and he can do business and he can work with the Americans, right? He worked with Patty. Patty helped him out, right? That's like I said the other day. There's two contradictions in the book put there to help us understand that Pelon and the Quetzal, they can adjust. They can work with anybody. They'll be fine, right? And the message at the end is just it's their job to maintain their heritage and their culture, to remain Quetzal. The book also has plenty of practical teachings. One of the books I tried to emulate was My Side of the Mountain. The name of the author escapes me. It sounds French. Is it Jacques something? My apologies, but very good read. And in that book, well, he gave a basic Cub Scout teachings, right? So I did some of that, and Pelon, he describes how to make a makeshift torch, how to cook with a spice bag. By the way, my mom's here in the audience, front row. This book is dedicated to my mom and Mariola. Where's Mariola? Mariola, yeah. They're the pillars in my family. What can I say? I love them. They love me. But you guys know why I included that spice bag recipe? This is a direct shot to the bow to my mom. So, can you help translating? Mom, your kitchen, best flavor. Your chili, the best. It's the best. But we have witnessed many a blender dying in your kitchen. So, when I translate that chapter, I'm going to hand it over to you. Because blenders' lives matter. Amo yo. See, I told you I could give you a 1 hour tour in 30 minutes. I'm just blazing through this. So the years pass and I continue to be haunted. And it didn't get better, it got worse. There was no prayer that could help me. There was no method or medication that could help me. The shadowy figure came back again and again, to the point that I became an insomniac. Didn't want to sleep, didn't want to dream. Have you guys ever felt afraid? No? Yeah. So it's awful to be afraid, right? And when I was having those dreams, again, I didn't know about dreams, about visitations, I didn't know anything but fear. Until one day I decided, you know what? How worse can it get? It's robbing me of my sleep. Yeah. And I'm not healthy. So how worse can it get? So one day I decided to take a stand. I was put again in that reoccurring dream, face to face with a shadowy figure. And I decided not to run. I was still scared, but I didn't run. I faced the shadowy figure. Something strange happened, because the shadowy figure, the way it acted, confused me. Brought up two hands and gave a slight bow. Confusing. That was like a reverence. I don't expect that from a menacing spirit or character at all. But I kept my ground. And I asked it, show your face. Show me your face. And then I heard in the kindest words, in a motherly tone. She said, you don't know me. Then I woke up. From that day, my life changed. I found courage, or I was taught courage. It took me too long. But I'm not afraid anymore. And in dreams and in life, we're to stand. So who was this shadowy figure? I'll let you decide. My abuela Belén, she was desert people coming from Sonora. And the reason I bring her up is I didn't know anything about her. I didn't understand her life, her troubles, what she went through, until I understood Pelon. Once I understood the trajectory, the years, because there's some parallels with his story and my abuela's story. By the way, my great-grandma from my mother's side, and my grandpa Manuel was her son, and Manuel was my mom's dad. And I'll just mention a few things that'll just going to, put things in perspective, right? So, my abuela, she was born around 1886, and she was born a second-class citizen because it was in the Sonoran Constitution that the natives, especially the rebels, were not afforded the rights of citizens. That means it worked like the Inquisition. You looked at somebody badly or you said something out of line, you're a rebel, and there you go. You go to jail, you can get killed, sanctioned by the state, or you could be sold for 60 pesos to the sugarcane plantations in Yucatan. They were sold into slavery up in 1908. Right? So can you imagine, like a mother having been born a second-class citizen? What type of emotional scars are left behind by having to comport or comply or just be around that environment? Those emotional scars are carried down to her kids and then grandkids. But we decided to stop all of that because it gets manifested in different ways. Emotional scars get manifested in things like anxiety, depression, substance abuse, suicide, you name it. because there's no balance in emotional education. There's only survival. My grandma, she was a survivor. Survive, live beyond, but not really live. Thankfully, she had good sense to get out of that place and bring us to the border. But like I said, I knew nothing, and I could not have understood her plight until I wrote Pelon. Right? So basically, the native was beat out of her, and she didn't want to be native anymore. The culture was lost, and don't call me Indio, because the Indio, that's the word that they use in Sonora. No más, no more. Because of the repercussions, right? Brings us to our next topic. So I'm presenting Pelon's stories as a hero, as a Native American hero, because of his feats of valor, right? You're going to read about him, going after bad guys and be like Rambo, right? So, and he was. People sought him from all over the place, from all over the states, because he can not only track in the desert, which was his homeland, but he can track in the mountains. He could track in the forests, etc. He could read or observe what the flora and the fauna would tell him in terms, did somebody come by here or not? Is this a new track or an old track, etc. Things that I don't personally know, but that he did know. But what? But why do we have heroes that are so far from our families or not familiar from us? The reason is that, well, we're told who our heroes are. We're told in school. In school is the government. So it's the government telling us who the heroes are. If we go to the church, well, we're told who our heroes are in church. No judgment there. We're just told. And nowadays, it's the internet. It used to be the big networks, but now it's the internet that make the overnight heroes, etc. But in general, the heroes that are taught to us in school are based on stories that are told by the victors. Right? The victor tells the story. I believe that was a Churchill quote, something to that effect. And at the end of the day, if the Quetzan or the desert people or whoever was put down because they were savages, but because they needed to be controlled, how could they have a hero, right? It wouldn't fit that narrative. Savage bad. So that's one of the reasons that we lack many of these heroes. But with Pelon, we aim to take a bite of that narrative and show that just like Pelon can survive and thrive and be successful, and the Quetzal can survive and thrive and be successful, we can also have heroes. Okay? We can elevate people, and we can handle it or tell the story in a respectful way, inspiring positive outcomes, and basically being uplifting. Right? And that's what you're going to find when you read Pelon. Okay. So I ran through my notes. I probably forgot a lot of things I wanted to tell you. But if you want, I'll take a few minutes of questions. or we can wrap up the presentation. What do you guys think? Any questions?
How long
Okay.
did it take you to write the story?
To write the story, the research was concluded the first quarter of 2024, and the book was written or the manuscript was finished by October 2024. The additional time went to beta readers, editors, illustrators, formatters, and yeah, all of that was out of my hands. Good question, thank you.
How long did it take you to form the idea to write a book?
Well, the decision was made in December 2023, and because I'm a project manager. By the way, my day job is environmental compliance. I work for a mine. And I'm a project manager, and I have those skills, and sadly, I don't get to use them much at work. I'm also a process improvement student, so my specialty was for a while process improvement projects, but anyway, that's neither here or there. So, but I decided, so I do projects. If I have to do a formal project, you know what I'm talking about. If I have to do a formal project for the facility, I'll do it. But how about I do something for my family that we can do together? Right? Yeah. So I map it down in a piece of paper, what we need, what the objectives are. I did a work breakdown schedule. I did calendar of events, all that neat stuff. So I initiated my own project. And research began. Was it the first week or second week of January? I can't remember exactly. Of the second week of January. Yeah, I was probably too tired or too lazy to do it the first week. In the back.
What was Pelon's family for the alcoholism, and did that make him start learning about adapting to the new environment?
Great question. Yeah. So Pelon's family was killed off in the Battle of 1848 when the Quetzal were put down. That's you read that they lost 2/3 of the family, but he was 5 or 6 years old when that happened, and he had found help or refuge, if you will, with other Quetzals, but they were all male, and they were all preparing to eventually do war on another tribe, which happened, about 6 years later, and they all died, and he was alone again.
Why would you say that Pelon would be a hero? What did he do for him to be considered that?
Right. So what I describe in the book are what I consider feats of valor. He was brave. He was cunning. He was skilled tracker, and he was renowned. Like I mentioned earlier, people from all over the states came looking for him to go track and get the bad guy. Yeah, that's something special because the trackers were typically limited to their area, right? So you have a fugitive loose in the mountains, you find a local tracker to find him. Or if he is loose in the desert, you find a local tracker. At least that's how I understand it. Yes?
When did he die and where?
Well, the book doesn't cover his death, but I think trying to recall. I might be close, but he died, I think, in 1899 on his way to Maricopa. He was assaulted and killed. He was supposed to testify into one of the criminals that he had caught years back. Yeah. So I don't finish his complete life.
Probably the third, because I'm working on a second book, and that will be more of a biography of a contemporary Quetzal. All right, ladies and gentlemen, that was
I have a
fun.
question.
Yes.
I'm his brother-in-law, by the way. I have a curious question. When we look at the quartermaster depot, and I saw like the fort up in Camp Verde, there's Native Americans that were embedded with the military. What was his relationship with the military? Bad or good?
Well, with Pelon, they were not friends, but in general, um, uh, the explorers, the colonists, and the U.S. Army, they span a couple hundred years, right? The explorers, the colonists, the U.S. Army. Every one of those bodies convinced, hired, or somehow persuade one group of natives so they can do the dirty work. And that was common all over Americas. I mean, to kill, exterminate, grab and sell as slaves, etc. So I thought that's where your question was going, but it's good to at least bring out that did happen too often. All right, so without further ado, I'd like to present to you Pelon, the Untold Story of a Yuma Hero. Available everywhere you get your books. Enjoy reading it, and it was a pleasure having you. Please don't forget as you leave, place a post-it note how you rate this presentation. Thank you and good evening. Oh, those who have your book, I'll be making my way to the back to sign, take pictures, etc. Thank you.